This is breaking news.
NYPD Commissioner Keechant Sewell is holding a news conference to make announcements about several ongoing investigations. Let's go to the briefing right now.
Good morning. Actually, it's afternoon now. Thank you for coming. As you know, the NYPD is laser focused on the real drivers of crime in New York City. The relatively small percentage of people who are responsible for the majority of the violence. Today, we're going to update you about several of the investigations that we're actively working, including the case of the homicide involving human remains found recently in Brooklyn. All of this speaks to the difficult, meticulous work done every day citywide by NYPD detectives. We did have an arrest in that case already. The subject had been charged with the unlawful disposal of a body. Those charges were upgraded late yesterday pursuant to a grand jury indictment against the suspect for murder. This investigation was challenging, and I want to thank Chief Essex and detectives of the 7-5 Squad and Brooklyn North Homicide. I also want to thank the Brooklyn District Attorney, Eric Gonzalez, and his team for the critical role they played in developing this case in the grand jury, which led to the indictment. Chief of Detectives James Essig, has more for you on that particular case and some others, and then I'll take your questions. Chief Essig.
Thank you, Commissioner. Before I get into that case, I'd just like to brief you on a couple of active cases we have going. One's closer to the rest, and in this particular one, we're asking for the public's help in a connection with an outrageous robbery in the Riverdale section of the Bronx. It occurs on Wednesday, March 9th at 8:20 hours in the morning. Two individuals approached a 35-year-old female who was walking with a 3-year-old son inside the lobby of an apartment. It's in a building near the Sedgwick and West Kinbridge Road. The individuals display a firearm and pointed at the female's torso and demand her property. Appallingly, they then point that weapon at the 3-year-old son's head. They remove the victim's car keys, cash, phone, and they take her auto. Here they are seeing if the victim, you see a good picture, a pretty clear picture of them leaving the auto. So we're asking for the help of the public in this one. Somebody in the Bronx in this area knows who these individuals are. When before they use these weapons, pointing it at the 3-year-old's head during the commission of a robbery, as you see in this video we're showing now, two males got a gun pointed at her stomach. The 3-year-old's right next to it. The gun's pointed at the kid's head. So anybody with any information, please reach out to Crime Stoppers at 1-800-877-TIPS. The second case I'd like to brief you out was a homicide that occurred on Tuesday, March 8th at 10 o'clock at night at 9th Avenue and West 19th Street. There were two victims in this. One was a male, 31 years old, who was shot and killed at the location. The other was a non-fatal male, 27-year-old. Yesterday, we apprehended that perpetrator in the crime. He is a Tyrell Rogers, male, 28 years old, residing at 347 East 167th Street in the Bronx. He's known to us with 7 prior arrests. We believe Mr. Rogers was seeing the same female as our non-fatal victim. There's an argument at the location. Mr. Rogers pulls out a firearm, firing shots, striking the person he was arguing with and that person's friend who was DOA on the scene. Yesterday, members of the warrant squad placed him under arrest. We then did a search warrant on his residence. We get his same black backpack he was wearing, the black Adidas bag with the fanny pack that he was carrying, and the .44 caliber weapon that we believe was involved in this. He was arrested and charged with murder too on that. In this case, I'd like to brief you on a particular gruesome incident that was brought to our attention on Thursday, March 3rd, in the early morning hours. With me today is Chief John Schell, the investigative chief of Brooklyn North, Sammy Herrera at the end, the Brooklyn North homicide lieutenant, Barbara Fisher, the 7-5 Detective Squad Commander, and the two most important people in the room who did the case, Detective David Quattrochi of the 7-5 Detective Squad, and from Brooklyn North Homicide, Detective Tommy Pisano. So officers from the 7-5 precinct responded to a 911 call of a suspicious DOA at the corner of Atlantic and Pennsylvania Avenue. Upon arrival, they observed a black plastic bag inside a gray bag in a shopping cart. Inside that black bag was a torso of a human body. Investigation into this incident led detectives from the 7-5 precinct and Brooklyn North Homicide to gather evidence which led to a grand jury indictment of a Harvey Marcelin, a.k.a. Marceline Harvey, a female black, 83 years old, born a male, but with a preferred pronoun of Miss, who was on lifetime parole for manslaughter and whom resides at 50 Pennsylvania Avenue, apartment 3D. Her record includes 5 previous arrests: in September 1957 for a felony assault, in May of 1962 for booking, in March of 63 for a rape, in April of 63 for a homicide up in Harlem where shot and killed a female. For this offense, she received a sentence of 20 years to life and was released in May of 1984 to lifetime parole. And the final arrest in November of 85 in Central Park, a homicide where the victim was stabbed and cut up and the female dumped in body bags. I just want to draw your attention to our old Detective Bureau logs that we keep up in the Bureau. And if you look at the notes on the side, all the way over to the right, it says cut up to pieces. For this, she pled guilty to manslaughter with a 6 to 12-year sentence, and she was paroled again in August of 2019. I'd like to now give you a chronology of the events that detectives were able to present to the grand jury. Evidence include extensive video canvassing, interviews of witnesses, search warrants executed to gather items recovered, which were instrumental and led to the indictment. So I'd like to draw your attention to February 27th at approximately 11:40 hours. We observed our victim enter 50 Pennsylvania Avenue with the same shopping cart she was later found dead inside. She is later identified as Susan Yeldon, female, white, 68 years old. That's Yeldon, L-E-Y-D-E-N. She resides at a senior home for the LGBTQ plus community in Fort Greene. According to persons known to us, she has lived there for 8 months and is an activist and supporter of these causes. On March 1st, our perpetrator, Miss Harvey, and another unknown female enter Home Depot in Manhattan. They purchase a Sawzall, trash bags, and cleaning solutions, and both individuals return to Pennsylvania Avenue. The next day, Miss Harvey is observed walking to the intersection of Atlantic and Pennsylvania, leaving our shopping cart behind. Approximately 6 hours later, a male observes the cart and calls 911. On March 3rd in the early afternoon, detectives arrive at 50 Pennsylvania Avenue and receive information our person of interest is on the 3rd floor. In apartment 3DD, they observe blood splatter and several trash bags. Ms. Harvey agrees to go back to the 7-5 precinct where she requests an attorney. The next day, March 4th, detectives executed the search warrant at that location where we recover human body parts inside. Shortly thereafter, our female person of interest is ID'd and taken into custody and is cooperating with this investigation. On March 7th, a human leg is recovered on Jamaica Avenue. I'd like to show you the video of Miss Harvey in a store. She gets up out of the wheelchair there, and the leg is right there on the seat. Yesterday, a grand jury returned charges of murder 2, criminal tampering of evidence, and a concealment of human corpse. You know, I'd like to thank the detectives who worked this case. Their relentless follow-up to leads and rigorous pursuit of evidence led to a successful conclusion. You know, this is a gruesome and barbaric homicide which resulted in a headless torso being disposed of on a New York City corner, and it takes a serial killer off our street. This is just the latest of a list of heinous offenses conducted over a period of a lifetime by Miss Harvey, and we can only hope that she can do no more. So, with that, I'll take questions.
Juliet.
Yes. Do you believe Ms. Harvey may be responsible for anything similar or any other crimes or any missing people?
Well, she was in jail from 64 to 84, gets out in 85, so she does 21 years. Back in jail in 86, comes out in 2019, another 33 years. So we're looking now through missing persons, OCME, any connections, any similar incidents that we could see from August of 2019 to the present.
Rocco.
How long did the suspect and the victim know each other? How did they meet? And why did she go there?
Well,
That's clear.
John, do you want to? John Shell, Investigative Chief.
John Shell, Brooklyn North, CHELL. Right now, we know they know each other for at least 2 years, and that connection is made through social media. We are still going to go through how the relationship came about and what the relationship is, but they did know each other for at least 2 years right now.
He hasn't made statements as to why this happened.
No, he requested a lawyer at the 7-5 squad.
Antoine.
The second person, you said there were two in addition to Ms. Harvey. What's the status of this person?
Excuse me? Oh, the second person, yeah. We observed the female walking in, buying them supplies at Home Depot, and she cooperated with the investigation.
Has she been charged with anything?
Not at the present time.
Thank you.
Hold on. Craig, you have a comment? No. Rocco?
Yeah, Chief, is it clear why, I know it's years ago, but why there was a plea deal to such a short prison term in the second murder case? And then also, can you talk a little bit about how long it took to track the video to the point of where the body was left, how many videos were looked at?
Yeah. You got it? Yeah. Well, go ahead, John. You can.
The location where the murder occurred and where the body was found was a very, very short distance. In addition to that, the body part for the leg was only about 2 or 3 blocks away. So a lot of video in a short geographical area, and we still have video to go to pre-scene to see what he was doing beforehand. So it's a tight area, but of course a lot of video we're still putting together and will continue to still put together.
The other point, if that's clear, why you plan to why he got only 6 to 12, and was the department aware when he was released, as is typically the case with police?
No, he received 6 to 12. He pled to manslaughter, and 6 to 12. But he was on lifetime parole for the earlier homicide, so he did 33 years for that. He gets out at 81 years old, or she.
The evidence in that case not as strong as in the murder case. Only getting 6 to 12.
We haven't looked into that, but that's something the investigation will lead us.
Did she use that wheelchair regularly? What was the leg doing?
Yes. Yes. Sam?
Can somebody
Yes.
talk about, and then where was the leg? Under, burning around the leg?
The bottom of the foot, the leg from the knee down, she was sitting on.
So was that wrapped in a bag?
Well, it's pretty obvious. So, yeah.
It was the same type of plastic bag that we recovered at the scene, and as you saw in the video, it was behind the lower back, riding around the 99-cent store. So yes, she had it with her.
For clarity, do the notes up there apply to the homicide or the manslaughter charge?
That's the manslaughter in 1985, where at the Central Park.
Any other questions on this topic?
One question, I heard that there was some tarot cards or something in the suspect's apartment, and is there anything regarding the motive or why this person was involved in this kind of violence?
We're still looking into the motive. But based on her history, she's capable of a lot of evil things out there.
Last question on this topic, John?
Chiefly a question, but mental health issues here in this case. Is there any mental health history involving her, and was there any mental health issues when you took her into custody?
No.
Again, we're still exploring that right now. Okay, like I said, he lawyered up. We haven't got there yet. We still have a lot of work to do post this crime. Okay.
All right, guys, we're going to move on. We're going to take other topics. Don?
We just get an update on two cases. One in the 109 precinct, a child was grabbed out of a stroller apparently by a repeat offender and injured, thrown into the street. And also, if we can get an update on the arraignment yesterday of an accused killer named Eugene Clark, who was released without any bail. And please, Commissioner, if you have your reaction regarding that case yesterday.
Right. In the 109 precinct in Queens today, about 6 o'clock, we had a male randomly shoves a 3-year-old, causing lacerations to the head. He is arrested. He has a history of unprovoked assaults on strangers, including a 9-year-old and punching a 66-year-old in the head, both on December 11th of last year. Also an open case for striking a male with a bottle in Astoria. That perpetrator was taken into custody about 6 hours ago. He's Chris Elder, a 31-year-old male. He has 8 prior arrests, and most of them are for assaults and criminal mischief.
Was he out on bail and took part in this latest incident?
We'll have to look into that. It's 6 hours old, but he was out. He was released shortly after the December 11th assaults.
And Commissioner, if you can update us on yesterday's arraignment of this accused killer.
So I will tell you, I'm having a full briefing on that case right after this presser, but I think our position is clear on these types of cases where anyone is released from court back into society where we deem them to be a risk, but I will have more on that once I review that case in depth.
And then just following up on that, is this a judge problem, a DA problem, or an Albany problem, and where does the problem fix?
So different cases have different areas where the problem lies, correct? So once I get this particular briefing, I'll be able to say where this problem lies, but we all know that these problems go from the state at times, sometimes to the inability of judges to be able to remand people. So in this particular case, I'll take a look at that and I'll be able to say that.
Henry,
Do you have an update on the off-duty officer who was in an altercation overnight, lost his weapon? I believe it was a personal weapon, correct me if I'm wrong. Were all procedures by that officer followed, considering they were off-duty, and do we have any suspects?
So the officer was off-duty, and it was his off-duty weapon. Actually, I'll yield to Chief Corey. He has some details on that as well.
Good afternoon. So the incident that you're inquiring about happens at about 4:35 this morning near the intersection of West 51st Street and 9th Avenue. The officer who is off-duty is assaulted by 4 male perpetrators. During the assault, the perpetrators apparently removed the officer's off-duty weapon. They then flee the scene. They're last seen entering a gray Dodge Charger, which then drives southbound on 9th Avenue. The officer was removed to a local hospital and has been admitted for treatment of his injuries.
And so far, I know off-duty changes it, but did he follow all department regulations best you can tell at this point?
Yeah, so again, 8 hours old, and right now there's nothing to indicate otherwise.
Marcia? Commissioner, how are you today?
I'm well, Marcia. How are you?
I want to talk to you about the latest crime stats, which are not going in the right direction. Since you've been commissioner, the total crime stats for year to date show overall a 47% increase in crime, but it's much worse when you look at the subways. The weekly number shows a 184% increase in subway crime, and year to date, 81.4%. You participated in 2 high-profile press conferences at the Fulton Street subway station to talk about ways to try to make a dent in subway crime, but nothing has happened. And my question to you is, how can you expect people to come back to New York City and restore the economy if they're afraid to take the subway? And what are you going to do about it?
So I disagree that it's not getting better. Our arrests are up as well. So I want to make sure that point is clear. So the initiative in the subway, as you stated, it started back in February, but we were actually beginning, I think, a few weeks before that. We've added a significant number of officers to that program. The initiative is focused, it's clear, and it's purposeful. So while the numbers are going up at this time, we certainly have put in place initiatives where we believe we will be able to turn the tide in subway crime. We want people to be safe, and that's our focus. We're putting 358 officers in there. We're bringing officers doing vertical from patrol down into the subways for those visits. We've had thousands of visits into the subway system as well. So we realize that the numbers may show one thing, but our arrests are showing something else, and we are continuing to focus on the crime in the subway. They will be safe, and we will make people safe in the subways as well.
Do you think that it's important to look at fare evasion and other crimes like that as a way to find out people who might be carrying weapons into the subway, or to crack down on people who you might find undesirable to be in the subway system? I mean, you know, we've had hammer attacks, you know, people bringing hammer attacks. It's not just guns, it's knives, it's hammers, it's all kinds of things. What do you think you need to do in order to stop all this?
Well, we would certainly like to be able to stop people at the fare evasion point. Obviously, that's been successful in the past, but at this time, that's a civil summons that we're allowed to issue. So while we do believe that someone who is evading paying the fare is probably engaged in something, we would not want them to be engaged in criminality or some other act in the subway that we'd like to prevent. So if we could do that, we would, but that's a civil summons at this time.
So is that going to be one of your policies going forward, that to go after fare evasion as a serious crime?
We have to go after fare evasion as a civil offense at this time. But we certainly want to be focused on it, because we do believe that when someone jumps the turnstile, they're probably going to commit a crime or some other activity that is undesirable.
So what do you want to say to people who are afraid, or still afraid to ride the subways and don't want to come back to work because they're afraid it's not safe?
I understand their concerns, and we certainly are working to make the subway safer. And I think it's starting to look that way. High visibility in the subways, more assets in the subways. We certainly want to make sure they feel safe coming in, because that's important to us.
But 184%
Okay. Marshall, you're going to move on to Craig. There are other people here.
Increase is not something that looks good.
Craig.
Our arrests are up too, Marcia.
Craig, Bob.
Mayor Adams had said yesterday that the two officers who stopped Cameron Williams in the Bronx 2 months ago were justified, despite a judge saying that one of the officers' testimony was incredible and unreliable, which is pretty bad. So do you believe that it's okay for an officer to false account justified his arrest? If not, is this officer going to be disciplined for providing a false account?
Well, frankly, I was a little taken aback by the judge's reaction myself. I reviewed the testimony. I did not see it that way. I view this from the perspective of New Yorkers and victims. That individual had been known to carry a firearm. Our officers, we send them out there to basically engage gang and crew members. That neighborhood had seen young people shot in the months leading up to this crime. Our officers did just that. They did it in a manner that we asked them to do, which is to engage someone who is a known person to carry firearms. And during that incident, which is what's really important here, that weapon was shot. A young man was shot. Our officer was shot. That's the issue here. This is certainly not our ability or our willingness to disagree with a judge. This is about the safety of this city and the kids in that neighborhood.
What within the judge's ruling did you not agree with the evidence? What evidence is she seeing that, because we're not seeing this, what is the disagreement? What's the disconnect?
So, as I understand it, she disagreed with the initial stop of the individual. But that individual was known to carry a firearm in the past, and we asked them to engage gang and crew members in that neighborhood.
All right, we have time for a few more. Rocco?
Commissioner, can you talk about when the neighborhood safety teams are going to hit the street? How quickly you hope that they're going to have an impact?
So in the beginning, when we started discussing these teams, we said we were going to do an extensive amount of vetting and training, and we were going to roll the initiative out. That initiative will be activated this Monday, the 14th. So,
and how long before you anticipate seeing an effect on?
Oh, I certainly hope it's right away, but we certainly will evaluate it as it moves forward. But they have time; they need to have time to get out there and be effective.
Antoine.
Commissioner Antoine Lewis, Fox 5. Can you bring us up to speed on the bodega shooting in Crown Heights? What do you all know, or really speak to that, where the young man was shot?
Sure, I'll turn it over to the detective.
Yeah, that's, it's the homicide on St. John's Avenue in Crown Heights today. That's still a very, very new investigation. So as we get updates on it, homicide investigations are we have to do very thorough work and look at it. We look at all avenues, and as we get updates, we'll get stuff out to you.
Mark Morales, CNN.
Commissioner, I was hoping to get a little bit of specifics on the neighborhood safety teams and in particular about their training. I know when we've asked Mayor Adams, he talked about how this is going to be something where taking the lessons from the past, where if their interactions with people are not wearing uniforms. But can you speak to something very specific that was shown to these officers over the last number of weeks? Some technique that they've been trained, or some policy, or anything?
Sure. So we actually had to take a look at the mistakes of the past and what we needed to change. The officers are being trained in the Constitution, in community interaction, car stops, the use of force. So they have been undergoing this training, and what is not really captured and what we really want to emphasize is that there's also a community input component to this training as well, where we talk to the community and find out exactly what the changes are they'd like to see, what their concerns were in the past, and what they can speak to moving forward. I'm actually going to ask Chief Corey to talk about some of the training because he was instrumental in helping to orchestrate it.
All right, good afternoon. So these neighborhood safety teams will receive 7 full days of training before they are deployed out. Many of them have already received that training. That training includes team tactics, so the entire team of officers, the sergeant and 5, all attend training together so that they learn to work as a team. They are extensively trained in minimal force techniques. They receive advanced tactics, car stops. De-escalation is central to all of it. Communication skills is a big part of it. Courtroom testimony training, and as the commissioner indicated, constitutional policing. All of the training surrounding investigative encounters is the same material that has been reviewed and approved by the court-appointed federal monitor, so we know that we are fully compliant.
All right, folks, we're going to take 2 more questions. Juliet?
Yes, and Commissioner Chief Corey, what neighborhoods will you be focusing on, and what do you want these neighborhoods to know about this when they see these new units, how to interact with them, it's part of their training. So there's community input. Where will they be, and how will they interact?
So the first rollout on Monday will be 25 commands. Obviously, that will be increased going forward. We've identified 30 precincts and 6 PSAs, 4 PSAs. I'm sorry. So that's Monday. We're going to roll out the rest as we move along. And to say to the community, what we'd like them to know is that these teams are there for gun violence. They're there for criminal activity, but they look like police officers. They are not in plain clothes. The uniform clearly states on the back NYPD Police. They are there for the safety of the community and to get the violent offenders off the streets.
All right, Rocco, is that last question?
Yeah, I guess Chief Essig and Chief Corey, this maybe is preliminary, but we've heard of subway stabbing in East Harlem, possibly involving a suspect wanted in multiple homicide.
So, Rocco, that's unfolding right
that's
now.
happening right now.
When this is over, we'll bring you up to date what we have, but it's literally still going on.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Commissioner.